lost generation. The lost generation, born between 1883 and 1900, experienced a world marked by immense change and upheaval. Growing up during a period defined by the horrors of World War I and the Spanish flu pandemic, this generation faced unprecedented challenges. World War I was a brutal conflict, with over 70 million people mobilized, 8.5 million killed, 21 million wounded, and 2 million soldiers dying from disease. Then came the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918 to 1920, claiming an estimated 17 to 50 million lives worldwide, with some reports suggesting even higher numbers, reaching up to 100 million. The aftermath of the war and pandemic left the world in economic turmoil, setting the stage for the Great Depression in the 1930s. High unemployment rates, widespread poverty, and a pervasive sense of hopelessness characterized this era. Yet, amidst these hardships, the seeds of popular culture began to sprout. Early cinema and magazines became escapes for many, offering a temporary distraction from the grim realities of life. Women gained the right to vote in 1920, marking a significant social change. Employment opportunities expanded, particularly for unmarried women and war widows. This era also saw the rise of the flapper in popular culture, a new type of young woman known for her rebellious spirit against traditional norms and a carefree, party-going attitude. The lost generation is remembered today for their resilience and ability to endure such a harsh and challenging period, offering a window into how people might cope with similar struggles in the modern or future world. The Greatest Generation. The Greatest Generation, also known as the World War II generation, was born between 1901 and 1927. They are celebrated for their heroism, technological innovation, and contributions to prosperity in the mid-20th century. Growing up, they witnessed the advent of radio, telephone, and automobile, technologies that rapidly became integral parts of daily life. This period was a golden age for American culture and entertainment. Literature, arts, music, and cinema flourished, and Hollywood's golden era took off with gangster films, musicals, comedies, and monster movies captivating audiences. Comic books also emerged during this time, giving birth to iconic characters like Superman and Batman. In music, genres such as jazz, blues, gospel, folk, and swing jazz gained popularity, shaping the soundscape of the era. The radio became a central medium, with millions tuning in to President Roosevelt's famous fireside chats and getting news in an exciting, accessible format. World War II saw 16 million Americans serve, many of whom were from this generation. A significant portion, 38.8%, were volunteers, while 61.2% were drafted, serving an average of 33 months. The war resulted in approximately 671,000 casualties in the United States alone. Remarkably, as of 2023, almost 120,000 of the Americans who served in the war are still alive today, bearing witness to the sacrifices and resilience of the Greatest Generation. The Silent Generation. Born between 1928 and 1945, the Silent Generation grew up in the shadow of World War II and the onset of the Cold War. As children, they watched their parents confront the fall of Nazism and the rise of a new adversary, communism. Coming of age in the post-war era, they faced a world grappling with a devastated social order, as the Soviet Union's actions set the stage for a tense global standoff that would last for half a century. Unlike the previous generations, who fought for systemic change, the Silent Generation focused on working within the system, keeping their heads down and striving for stability and success. This mindset was shaped by the era's prevailing economic and social conditions, which emphasized conformity and hard work. The golden age of radio, the rise of trade unions, the development of transatlantic flight, and the discovery of penicillin all influenced their formative years. This generation often married and had children young, adhering to traditional family structures. However, their cautious and conformist approach would later be criticized by more radical generations, such as the baby boomers, who sought to challenge the status quo. The baby boomers. The baby boomers, born between 1946 and 1964, are perhaps the most famous modern birth generation. This era was marked by an extraordinary population explosion, with 76 million births recorded in the United States alone. This surge was driven by a strong post-war economy, where Americans felt confident in their ability to support large families. As a core marketing demographic, boomers significantly influenced the economy. Products tailored to their age group, from toys to records, became wildly popular. Technological advances before, during, and after the war, such as plastics, television, magnetic tape, transistors, integrated circuits, and lasers, played a key role in improving the standard of living. Items that were once considered luxuries, like washing machines, dishwashers, refrigerators, and telephones, became household staples, allowing the average American to live like the upper class of previous generations. This extended period of optimism gave rise to a cultural boom, particularly in the music industry. Artists and bands like the Beatles, Bob Dylan, and the Rolling Stones became cultural icons, capturing the spirit of the era. But it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. The boomers were also a generation of radical change, challenging existing conservative, traditionalist thinking and advocating for left-leaning social causes. Issues such as the sexual revolution, civil rights, nuclear disarmament, ethnocultural diversity, and environmental protection became central to the national conversation. As these political and social debates intensified, protests grew more frequent and sometimes violent, especially as the Vietnam War dragged on. This period of social upheaval and government distrust set the stage for a more divided United States, a legacy that would shape future generations. Generation X. Generation X, born between 1965 and 1980, is often called the latchkey generation due to the large number of children who returned home from school to an empty house. This was a result of higher divorce rates, increased maternal participation in the workforce, and the growing availability of childcare options outside the home. Young adults of this time were dubbed the MTV generation and were sometimes characterized as slackers, cynical, and disaffected. Unlike the baby boomers, Gen X experienced declining birth rates, partly due to the introduction of the birth control pill in 1960 and the legalization of abortion in 1973. However, changes brought by the 1965 Immigration Act partially offset these declines, contributing to a more culturally and ethnically diverse America. Gen X saw a music scene that included alternative rock, hip-hop, punk, post-punk, and heavy metal, with these genres rising in popularity during their formative years. Technological innovation also boomed, with companies like Apple, Commodore, and Atari introducing personal computers that transformed the way people worked and played. The video game industry flourished, with arcades becoming popular hangouts and home consoles revolutionizing entertainment. Compared to boomers, Gen Zers were more educated, with college enrollment becoming more common. They embraced individualism and entrepreneurialism, helping to create companies like Google, Wikipedia, Amazon, and YouTube, which would later dominate the digital landscape. As Gen Zers moved into the 90s and early 2000s, they continued to shape the world with their pragmatic, innovative approach. Millennials. Millennials, or Generation Y, were born between 1981 and 1996. They are the first generation to grow up with the internet, mobile technology, and social media, making them the first truly global generation. Connected to the entire world, millennials are often described as digital natives. However, they are also seen as the unluckiest generation due to their slower economic growth and higher levels of student debt and childcare costs compared to previous generations. Millennials were born during a time of declining fertility rates worldwide and are having fewer children than their predecessors. The 2010s saw youth facing significant economic challenges, including high unemployment rates and increased poverty, leading many to live with their parents longer than previous generations. They are also less likely to be religious, although many identify as spiritual. This generation experienced significant events like the 9/11 attacks, which reshaped American culture and launched the war on terrorism. Despite these challenges, millennials are characterized by their digital fluency, diverse perspectives, and strong sense of social consciousness. Growing up in a world where global news and information can be accessed in seconds, they are very active socially and politically, not afraid to use their voices to advocate for change. Generation Z. Generation Z, or Zoomers, were born between 1997 and 2012. While millennials were introduced to the internet and smartphones during their formative years, Zoomers were born into a world where these technologies were already ubiquitous. They have grown up with social justice movements, a polarized political climate, the Black Lives Matter protests, and a global pandemic that disrupted their education and social lives. Zoomers are digital natives, fluent in the language of social media, where platforms like YouTube and TikTok shape their consumption of information and culture. Individualism defines the Zoomer spirit, as many of them are embracing entrepreneurial ventures and gig economy jobs, transforming traditional notions of work. Social media trends and influencers play a significant role in shaping their worldview, making them a generation that is both highly connected and uniquely independent. Generation Alpha. Generation Alpha, born from 2013 onwards, is still in their early years, making it hard to predict what their future will hold. They are the first generation to be raised primarily by millennials and are growing up in a world where technology is deeply embedded in daily life. Often referred to as the pandemic generation, their early childhoods have been shaped by COVID-19, with lockdowns and remote learning becoming part of their normal experience. Many of these children are known as iPad kids, spending significant time interacting with digital devices. They are likely to experience young adulthood in the 2030s and, according to the United Nations, could have an average lifespan of 83 years. While it's difficult to foresee all the challenges they will face, issues like mental health, misinformation, and polarization are likely to be significant. As they grow, Generation Alpha will undoubtedly carve out their own unique place in history, building on the legacies of those who came before them.